Hi, it's me again, segment 2. I'm going to put these back on because I squint a lot. What we're going to talk about now is the pool equipment. Hopefully the first segment didn't either scare you or run you away from anything, because this is just as easy. Every one of these pools is wired with a breaker panel, an electrical panel, a fuse box panel, whatever you want to call it. They don't necessarily look like this. Typically they're gray. Typically things like pool pump, cleaner pump, lights, they're marked in there. That's where you should be turning everything on and off from when you go to stop the pump and restart the pump. If you do that, you're golden. It'll work great. I'm going to try to explain how water just goes through a system. This particular plumbing setup is probably a little different than yours. All of them are probably, to one degree or another, a little different. Sometimes equipment changes, sometimes the situation where we have the room to put the equipment in and plumb all these valves in changes. So don't just try to bear with me and follow the water, okay? The first thing I want to point out is the pump. This is a pump. Now, we happen to be using on all the pools in the last quite a few years what we call IntelliFlow pumps. These are a Pentair product that has the ability to give you different speeds. The different speeds come into play in a couple of different areas. First of all, they're very, very energy saving. Second of all, if you need to clear a pool up or get water moving rapidly, it has the capacity on high speed to do that. Under normal operating conditions, they're very, very quiet. This one is running at a middle speed right now. We actually have one in our showroom that you could be talking and right next to it on the lowest speed and you don't even know it's running. But anyway, I digress. Back to the pool. Now, what happens is this system is drawing in water from typically 3 different areas. The skimmers, which are that box type deal that take the water off the top of the pool. It's called a surface skimmer. That's why it's called a skimmer, okay? And the bottom drain or drains. Nowadays there's 2 drains for safety reasons. If you're watching this video and you have an older pool, you probably have a single drain in the bottom of it. So what happens here? When you go to turn the pump on, the water comes in through the 3 intake valves, all right? These valves, just think of it this way. Anything coming in from the front of this pump pot is from the pool. When it goes beyond this pump pot, it becomes a return line or something going back to the pool. Granted, it can go through a bunch of rigmarole, but the bottom line is it's coming out of the top of this pump volute and going back to the pool. Bobby, my assistant, we're going to show you a few things on this also. The first thing, and then we'll get to maybe I'll just get to the other stuff first and we'll come back to this. When it comes out of the pump, it goes through the filter tank, all right? This filter, in most situations, is going to be a cartridge-type filter that we install in pools. The older type of filters, whether they're sand filters or diatomaceous earth filters, don't waste any brain waves even thinking about it because you don't even know what they are and it doesn't matter. So when the water goes through this filter tank, it's forced in and through these cartridges, and there's pleats in these cartridges that trap the debris. The most common filter we use is called a 420. In plain English, it just means it has, if you were to undo all those pleats on the 4 cartridges, there's 42 square feet of surface area catching stuff going through there. So it traps it, goes back through, out the filter, into the heater, all right? When it goes through the heater, it then goes back through an automatic chlorinator, part of the water does, and then returns back to the pool. If all else fails, just follow how the water goes through a system. No matter how complicated or simple it is, it'll help you a lot in just trying to understand what's going on. I think the next thing we'll probably do here is start with cleaning the pump pot that's where all the water comes into, okay? Good rule of thumb. If you have 0 water pressure coming into the filter, all right, you've got something wrong in front of it because the water isn't making it to the filter. If you have really high pressure, there's probably something in the filter that's not allowing the water to get through the filter and into the rest of it. Your water flow is controlled by these 2 things. The rest of this junk has nothing whatsoever to do with it. period. End of story. So Bobby, why don't we shut this thing off and take that pump pot out and show them how to kind of clean that up. Okay, we've just shut the power off to the pump, all right? Something to remember though, if the heater is running or has been running and you want to do this, shut the heater off and let it sit for 10 minutes, because what happens is it's basically a boiler in there and you've got a lot of hot water, and you want those tubes that it goes through to cool off before you just stop it and let all that hot water kind of boil out in there. It'll save you some, that's the way you're supposed to do it, okay? The next thing we're going to do is shut the valves off coming into the pump, okay? I didn't say shut all the valves. I didn't say even look at the other valves. I said shut the valves off going into the pump, okay? The ones remember, in front of the pump. So you just shut those off using 2 hands. If you use one hand, A, you'll call and say you can't turn the valve, or B, you'll break it off. So why don't you just avoid that whole conversation. The next thing we're going to do then is get the pump pot out of here. Just give it a little snap. If you can't give it a little snap, use a rubber mallet on the thing and gently wrap it. Don't go after it like you're framing a house, just give it a couple taps, all right? So when you open this thing up, there's an O-ring in here, all right? They're very easy to fall out and lose in the dirt somewhere. So if you don't have this O-ring in here, the pump won't start up again. It won't prime because it's sucking air. Remember, everything in front of this is the suction side of the program. Everything beyond this is the pressurized side of the program, all right? So this is called an O-ring because they're round. The reason we shut these valves off is because when you go to start the pump, you've trapped the water in those suction lines as opposed to letting air let the water go back in there. It just makes your life easier when you turn the pump on because the water is already there. You'll get what I mean in a minute. So you take the pump out, the basket out of the pump, and there's usually, I should have gotten a new one. This one's a little rusty, but at any rate, you just kind of tap it and knock the stuff out of it. If you get cottonwood, hair, stuff like that, you can rinse it out if you want, but you get the idea. Just get most of the stuff out of there. You can give it a couple of wraps, and that sort of loosens it up, and just throw it away, all right? Put it back in there. You can't mess that up because it can only go one way, all right? Then you take this pump pot cap, making sure the O-ring's in there, put it back on. There are grooves that it'll fit into there. Then give it a little hit, just give it a little twist, and give it a slight tap. You do not have to take a sledgehammer to put the thing on there, because what happens? You won't get the thing off there. All right, so now that we've got that addressed, we're ready to turn the filter and pump and everything back on. Go ahead, Bobby, would you please turn it back on? All right, now when this pump turns back on, you've got these valves closed. Turn it on and then open the valves. All right, what happens then is the water, since you've trapped it right in front of the valve, is immediately going to the pump. You're not drawing a lot of air in there. You can still see some bubbles coming in, but not like if you had to reprime the thing from start. Think of it in this way. If you have a straw and you put it in a glass, you take the straw out with your finger on the end of it, the water stays in the straw. As soon as you remove your finger, kerspoosh, the water is out of the straw. Same thing here, except it's 1.5 inch straws, okay? Now, the next thing, after the water comes out of the pump, right here, it's going to go into the filter. When it goes into the filter, as I alluded to prior to this, the elements in there have to be cleaned occasionally. Every yard's going to be a little bit different, although these pools stay a lot cleaner with these auto covers than historically without a cover on them. We're going to take this apart and show you how to do that. Whether you think it needs it or not, it's not a bad idea once it's up and running to get on kind of a schedule for yourself. I would suggest maybe once a month, whether you think it needs it or not, maybe take them out and hose them down. I would not use a pressure washer on them because you'll wreck them. I would encourage though that you maybe have a second set around, just if you don't feel like cleaning them right away, take them out, put the alternate set in, clean the ones when you feel like cleaning, you're all good to go. Question I get often is, how long do these things last? I tell people either until they're ineffective or probably a couple years. I think if you just replace them every couple of years, they work a lot better, because there's certain body oils, there's things you can spray on them to clean them, but basically after a couple years they get kind of loaded with body oils, suntan lotion, kids baby lotion, all that kind of stuff. So what's going to happen now, when we take this apart, there's a band that holds the top and the bottom of this filter together. It's very important that you kind of follow some basic rules on this. It's highly pressurized. You don't want to take any chances. If you're at all concerned that that nut or that bolt on that band is less than pristine, or you have a hard time, or think it's cross-threaded or something like that, call us. You don't want to kind of have it on there, because what'll happen is the thing will be blowing water all over, and it's just not a good deal. All right, Bobby, should we shut this thing off and take it apart? Another thing that's been kind of handy that I've told people is, when you take this top off the filter tank that he's going to do momentarily, take your phone and take a picture of it. One of the biggest problems we have with people cleaning filters and stuff is that they tend to, see, I almost forgot to shut these. The biggest problem they have is when they reassemble it, and they have a propensity for leaving parts out. Not a good idea. All the parts should basically go back where you took them out in the first place. I've done it, everyone's done it, where my pool isn't clear. Well, I guess if you don't have the manifold on top, it's not really doing anything in there. So just the little things matter when it comes to when you're disassembling these deals. Go ahead, Bob, let's take that thing out of there. This is a rapid way of getting the filter the water out of the filter tank. You just take the cap off of the pump, and since the filter is higher than the pump, the water just runs out all over your feet. And once you do that also, you know that there's no pressure left in this. You can open this relief valve, but by removing that pump cap, you know for certain there's no trapped air in here, all right? It's a 7/8 wrench that works on there. You can use either, I would use a socket or one of those, a box wrench that's got a ratchet attached to it. If you try unscrewing out with a crescent wrench, you will be one unhappy, worn out, mad person, because it will take a long time to do. So again, this isn't scary, it's just something that has to happen occasionally. I myself, before Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, just take them out and clean them, whether it needs it or not. Just take them apart and clean the things. Okay, so inside here you can see those 4 elements I was talking about. These are the elements, okay? This is what's actually doing the cleaning on everything. This top piece is called a manifold, all right? The manifold, what it does is it keeps them in place, and and keeps the water from going back down inside them through the center channel as opposed to coming through the pleats. Once again, not difficult math. It's being forced in here, the water's being forced through here, not down here. If you leave this out, what happens is the water just goes in there and nothing gets clean, because it's basically avoiding going through. It's taking the path of least resistance, okay? So these little guys come out. All right, you take them, hose them off, and clean them. All right, what we're going to touch on here is cleaning the filter elements that you've taken out, okay? Remember, you took a picture of it, you've accounted for all the parts, you didn't leave them all over the yard. Bobby, go ahead and start squirting that thing down. What we recommend is just a nice nozzle on a good hose with some pressure, not a pressure washer. Start at the top, work all the junk down towards the bottom. If you have cottonwood, that's going to be your biggest villain as far as a cloudy pool goes. So if you do, you may have to do them more often than not. But anyway, that's the long and the short of it, and that's how you clean a filter element. Now that we've cleaned these filter elements, we've put them back into the filter tank itself. What you set them on is basically this upper manifold flipped over on the bottom, okay? So there's holes or cups that the holes will fit on these cups. Again, remember, keep your parts close by so you don't lose them. You're more likely to lose stuff if it's scattered all over, so be a little bit organized on that. This fits back down into the tops of these. Just give them a slight tap down and you've got it. If you have a paper towel, this is a large O-ring. It's not a bad idea just to wipe it off before you put the lid back on it. Little sand and grit and particles get built up on there. Don't go coating it with anything. Don't call about what you should put on it. Just wipe the grit off of it. Bobby, can we put this thing back on here then? Okay, so this is the filter top going back on. Don't play with this. Remember, you had this open before you took it apart, because opening this and opening the pump pot allows the pressure inside here to be relieved, so you don't be a dumb Dan and get the thing hit you in the face or something. There's a little picture of it right on here showing you what not to do. Sometimes it is easier if you have two people to hold it. I find it very obnoxious myself to try and hold this on, get a washer, and then get the screw on and all. It's just easier if someone gives you a little bit of a hand on this thing. So if you have any questions when you're putting the filter back together, either call us, consult our owner's manual, which we've given you, watch this video, or what's the fourth thing? Oh, go to our website. There's all kinds of frequently asked questions with tons of information there. Again, most of the simple things can be addressed if somebody, actually spends 4.5 seconds or minutes looking for it. But again, call Prestige Pools if you're at all wondering what's going on. Call us. Now remember, I reiterate, this top has been open, so the pressure relieved before we took the tank off the top. Again, each one of these things has one or two rather pertinent items that one should remember. That's a biggie, okay? Just remember, that's a biggie. So anyways, Bobby, let's start this thing up. We'll go ahead and put our pump cap back on. Again, make sure the O-ring's in there, okay? Set the thing on there. Give it a little twist and a little bump. Don't forget now, as you assess the whole thing, this piece with the spring in that you're looking at right here, that nut should be, it's going to squeak and howl and sound like a squirrel killing each other or something. But the thing is, that's got to be cranked all the way down until that spring is totally compressed. You're not going to wreck it. It's just, and it sounds awful. And no, you don't grease it, don't put anything on it. It's just, that's what it is. Anyway, start this thing up, Bob, please. All right, these valves are still closed. Remember, we trapped the water in there, the lame straw thing I told you about. All right, now it should turn on in a second here. There it goes. There's a bit of a delay. It starts slowly, at least the IntelliFlow does, and then kicks up to high. Then what you do is just go ahead, open the valves up. Okay, using two hands, like we said before. And bingo, the water's going back through the system. You'll notice probably a little bit of a pressure drop because the water's flowing more freely through the elements. As I've said for decades, these are not NASA quality gauges. Don't get too wound up over the pressure. Just focus on the difference in it. Don't really look so much at what it is. So now the water is clean, everything's cool. You're going back through the heater, all right? As you go through the heater, you're gonna find that all these are thermostatically set. So you just, or digitally, so you can see the temperature that the thing's operating at. I think you're probably better off keeping the pool at a constant temperature rather than trying to, make it go up and down. It's not like you're trying to heat a 1,200 square foot cabin in Hayward on your way up there. You've got about 20, 30,000 gallons of water, and the heat rate, rule of thumb, is usually about 3/4 to 1 degree per hour. So if you got little Ricky's second grade class coming over next month, don't go out there in the morning and think that, everyone's going to be happy because the thing only got up to 78 degrees. Think a little bit ahead or just leave the thing at a temperature. One thing I wanted to touch on that everybody will happen to everybody at some point in owning one of these is, I forgot to shut the valves. My world is going to end. No, it's not. You just have to reprime the pump. So what happens, let's say this one was left open, or they were all left open. What you're going to do is close all of the valves, all right? You're then going to get a bucket of water and simply fill it in the pump pipe. Now, it'll get to a point where it'll start running out once these pipes are full of water. Okay, see that? That's that point. What's going to happen then is you put the pump lid back on. Don't forget the O-ring, remember? Give it a little tap. Now all the valves are closed. Bobby, please start the thing up. And what's going to happen, once this gets onto the high speed, you're going to slowly open one line at a time. And as you do that, you'll see water gradually start trickling in there. As it becomes more and more of a flow through there, gradually open the thing back up. Okay? If all of a sudden it drops down, shut the valve off and refill it with water. There, it's all ready to go. Back to normal. All right? That's how you reprime a pump. Nothing to worry about, nothing to get sweaty about. Thanks. I think the next thing we'll probably talk about is a chlorinator. We do put what they call an automatic chlorinator or feeder. Don't think of it as automatic. It doesn't sense anything. It's dumber than a box of hair. It just knows that it'll break down chlorine tablets at a specific rate at whatever the little dial's set at, okay? It knows nothing. Last thing to touch on the equipment slab is going to be that chlorinator that I had spoken about earlier. It's not under pressure, but remember, kill the breaker, shut the valves, open the top of the thing and take a look in there. What I will tell you right now though is do not stand directly over it. You're going to have chlorine gases coming out of there and they're very unpleasant. If you take a look in there, you can see the tablets that are present. Basically, keep the thing filled up, check it once a week. There's a dial adjustment on the bottom here that's not scientific, remember? So what you're going to do is just kind of play with it. If the pool's 90 degrees, you got 1 million kids in it, you're going to have to probably keep it cranked up a bit higher. If it's covered and nobody's going in it, say it's in the fall, turn the dial down a little bit. That's something you as a homeowner will have to play around with and kind of get a feel for. All right? Thanks.